Welcome to Things You Don't Know. Before we start this episode, I'd like to give a shout out. Recently, my cat was ill and in pain. She knew something was up and refused to get into her carrier, so I could not get her to the vet. After some searching, I found Pet Wow, a mobile vet. Dr. Line came to me in his very surprisingly well equipped truck, and he and his assistant were wonderful and gave my cat excellent care. This is not a paid shout out, people. I just wanted pet owners in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area to have a resource if and when needed. Their number is 859 781 2577, and I do recommend them. Now, to this episode. In this episode, we'll look at another kind of glossed over piece of history. Yes, it's about pirates. But unlike the episode in which we looked at Blackbeard, this episode will look at female pirates. Yeah, there were some female pirates. Specifically, we're looking at female pirate commanders. There are many examples, but we will focus on the five most infamous female pirate leaders. That would be Ching Sao, Anne Bonny, Mary Read, Grace O'Malley, and Rachel Wall. So, Ching Sao was one of the most potent pirate leaders of all time, male or female. She was born in 1775 into a poor Chinese family, but she had a will and intelligence to improve her life. Sao realized that her best way to make a living was to become a prostitute, at least temporarily. So she's signed on to a flower boat. Flower boats were party boats offering a variety of, shall we say, entertainment, including gambling and prostitutes. So, as a young teen, she took her place as an entertainer. She quickly discerned that discovering secrets from men that she entertained and either selling those secrets or being paid to keep them secret added significantly to her income and also gave her some power. One of the customers that she entertained was a pirate captain who was smitten by her beauty and stunned by her business acumen. He asked Sao to marry him, and she agreed on the condition that she would share equally in the profits and in the command also. They were married in 1801. Ching adopted Chen Pao, probably so he would have an heir. It was rumored that Ching Yi and Ching Pao were lovers. It's not known for sure. Now, Sao proved to be a more than competent military strategist and a masterful manipulator. Under her deft hand, the pirate fleet doubled in size, and she convinced the most powerful pirate fleets to join her fleet. And there were several of them, but she only took the top five of the other pirate fleets, and they basically took over the pirate business. Now, they maintained their own identity because they flew different colored flags. Now, Sao's fleet, which was the largest, flew the red flag and was therefore known as the Red Flag Fleet. Five other fleets flew black, blue, white, yellow, or purple flags. Now, under Sao's arrangement, a collective treasury for the benefit of all the pirate fleet pirates was maintained, which was one of Sao's innovations. Now, in 1807, her husband, Ching Yi, died. There are two different stories concerning his death. One story is that Ching Yi was blown overboard during a gale force storm and drowned. The other story says he was killed in a land action in Vietnam. There's a lot more information that you can get on that. I think it is most likely that he was wounded in action in Vietnam, leaving him weakened, and after returning to the ship, he was blown overboard because he was in this weakened state. The ultimate result was that either way, that Cao consolidated her dominion over the pirate fleets by manipulating Jing Pao, having an affair with him, and later marrying him. Yeah, she married her adopted son, which was not all that unusual in that day. Now, Cao had two children. There's no clear record about what happened to them. Some people have claimed her as an ancestor, but no verified ancestral records have been supported. As sole commander of the pirate fleet, Cao personally commanded over 300 pirate ships and 20,000 pirates. She forged an alliance with other pirate leaders who followed her and created a naval force that counted over 1,500 naval ships and 180 plus, some say 200,000 pirates. These numbers far outstripped more famous pirates, male or female, and also at the time, her fleet was significantly larger than many of the country's fleets. Pretty interesting. Anyhow, she instituted a set of rules or standards for her fleet, which is another innovation. The core rules of the fleet were: one, pirates who gave unsanctioned orders or refused to follow orders were executed immediately. Stealing from the public fund of captured goods or money or raiding villages that supported pirates was again punishable by death. All captured goods, money, or enslaved people had to be presented for inspection. The rewards were handed out in a predetermined way. There was a certain percent that went to the general fund, a certain percent went to the person who had gotten the booty, whatever. It was prohibited to have sex or rape female captives. That was kind of a big change for that time. Now, pirates could marry captives if they had the means to support them and promised to be faithful to them. If they did not do that, then they could be punished rather severely, up to, through, and including death. So the rest of the females that were captured, they were either ransomed or they were freed. The punishment for having sex or raping them was death. Now, various other offenses were punishable by flogging, ironing, quartering, and mutilation. And that was mainly done for deserters, the mutilation part. Now, Cao's fleets came to control the South China Sea and reduced the Imperial Chinese Navy by half. Yeah. She caused real big, significant problems for other foreign navies after the Chinese asked for help dealing with her. She handed several defeats to such countries as England, France, and Portugal, and some others too. She also charged government and private shippers for safe passage. Essentially, she kind of put herself on the government payroll through that maneuver. Yeah. Anyhow, ever the shrewd person, Cao realized that the pirate life could not last forever. So in 1810, she negotiated a royal pardon, got to keep most of the booty she had collected, and several ships. She opened a small shipping and importing business, as well as a casino. Um, there was some speculation that the casino offered prostitution as well, but has not been confirmed. Anyhow, she died a very wealthy and satisfied woman in her sleep at age 69 in 1844. So, Dr. Deneen, perhaps you can introduce Anne Bonny, another interesting female pirate.
Thank you, Dr. Weaver. Anne Bonny was perhaps the living embodiment of a new era in which gender no longer exclusively controlled the opportunities available to women. She was born in 1698 in County Cork, Ireland, reportedly the illegitimate daughter of Mary Brennan and her mother's employer, the noted lawyer and member of the Irish House of Lords. Ireland had its own parliament in the 18th century, Sir William Cormac. To avoid shaming his family for having an illegitimate child, Sir William fled with Anne to London in 1708. The source of this information is John Robinson's wonderful book, Born in Blood. Dressed Anne as a boy, called her Andy, and passed her off as the son of a dead cousin. Given the erratic mail service and travel, it took 2 years for the rest of the Cormac family to determine the whereabouts of young Anne. Unfortunately, Lady Cormac controlled the family finances and was rather annoyed that Sir William had violated the sanctity of his marital vows. She cut off all his money and threatened her husband publicly with a divorce, which was so rare in those days it required an act of parliament. Anne was rightfully very upset, and like Peggy Arnold after her, had a very fiery temper. Listeners might enjoy our podcast on Peggy Arnold. She engaged in fistfights with the servants, and at 19 married James Bonny, a former seaman in the Royal Navy turned pirate. Her father disapproved of the marriage, but Anne couldn't care less. Colin Woodard's great book, Republic of Pirates, detailed her voyage on the high seas from London to Carolina. Young Anne acquired strong skills with both a machete and firearms, first as a means of survival among a gaggle of very rough, crude seamen, and later on as her way of earning a living. Her ability to defend herself proved invaluable to Anne in the world of pirates, where quarter was rarely asked and seldom given. Anne soon became a legend. While never officially commanding her own ship, she served as first mate and chief intelligence officer on many ships. Anne Sharp's book, Daring Pirate Women, explores her time in New Providence. Not New Providence, New Jersey, the former home of my dear friend Leslie Finelli, a little joke there, but the haven of Nassau in the Bahamas. During the 3 months prior to her husband's arrival, Anne made contacts and acquired wealth. Her husband James received the king's pardon in 1717 and then became a paid informant to the governor on the activities of fellow pirates over the next year. The activities of her husband caused their marriage to collapse. Anne began to seek out new comrades in bars to maintain her sanity. It was there, according to Charles Johnson's The General History of Pirates, she made the intimate connection with her first mate and partner, Calico Jack Rackham. Once they became romantic partners, as was the custom of the era, Rackham offered James Bonny a substantial bribe of about £50,000, $1 million in today's money, to divorce Anne. Sadly, he refused. Over the first 3 months of 1718, these hopelessly in love buccaneers preyed on all sorts of vessels to seize plunder. Anne disguised herself as a man, winning the crew's respect through ruthlessness in battle, robbing with aplomb, repeatedly throwing rivals in the drink, and generally enforcing the pirate code. It was during one of these battles in March 1718 that, according to captive Dorothy Thomas, her ample bosom and impressive backside were revealed for good and all. That's Audrey Ball's book, Bartholomew Roberts and His Pirate Crew. Over the next year and a half, 35 ships were plundered, 20 people were ransomed, and 100,000 pounds sterling worth of goods were seized on a voyage between Jamaica and the Dominican Republic. After 18 months, the party was over. In November of 1720, Calico Jack was conquered by pirate hunter Jonathan Barnett, who hunted under a commission from Governor Samuel Laws of Jamaica. Overwhelmed by drink, most crew members were easily subdued. Anne and her partner and possible lover, Mary Read, fought alone for hours, knocking out Barnett's bicuspid with a rum bottle, drawing blood by biting the left arm of another crewman, and generally behaving like demented tigers. When finally overpowered, Anne hissed, "If this crew were men and not frightened chickens, you would have lost all your teeth." Calico Jack and the male members of the crew were captured and quickly tried, sentenced to death by hanging, and bitingly remarked, according to the general history of pirates, if he had fought like a man, he would not have been hung like a dog. Anne and Mary, quote, pled their bellies, that is, their pregnancy, as Calico Jack had apparently impregnated them both. Anne gave birth and subsequently disappeared. This is from worldhistory.org. Her ultimate fate is known only to God and history. Dr. Weaver, I think this is a good time to explore the history of Grace O'Malley. I understand she has quite a reputation.
Well, indeed. She's noted and touted as a female pirate. However, her fame and reputation seems to me to be based on Irish legend and folklore and is more dependent on her exploits on land than her time pirating. Grace was born in Ireland sometime around 1530. Not much is known about her childhood. Her father, Owen, was an Irish chieftain, and her mother was Margaret O'Malley. The O'Malley clan touted themselves as being a seafaring family, although they also had lands and cattle, and that was, I think, their primary source of income, as it was for most Irish in that area. But little is known about their exploits at sea. There is a legend that Grace wanted to go with her father on some adventures at sea, and he told her she could not go as her long hair might get entangled in the lines of the ship. It is purported that she cut her hair off to shame her father into letting her go on the trip, and that actually was garnered her a nickname, the bald-headed or the shaven. Her plundering and piracy is said to have extended into Spain and the Outer Hebrides. She was known for raiding towns and stealing cattle in the coastal areas. Grace introduced toll taking at sea for safe passage. And that was an interesting innovation, too. Another legend says that Grace gave birth to her son, Tibbet, on board ship the day before Algerian pirates attacked the ship. She is said to have wrapped the infant and gone on deck to rally her men to repel the attackers. Anne Chambers, in her book, Grace O'Malley, the biography of Ireland's pirate queen, 1503 to 1603, by Gill Books, did considerable research attempting to verify information concerning Grace O'Malley, but much of her past is just open to conjecture. A part of that had to do with the fact that records in Ireland in that point of time were basically kept by rather misogynistic priests. So any mention of females was scanting at best. So during the 1570s, Ireland went through a great deal of political, social, and cultural upheaval due to the Tudor conquest. Grace got into a dispute with Bingham, who had been appointed governor of the section of Ireland um, that she lived in, who may have been responsible for the murder of her son. Well, Grace became a dedicated rebel at that point. When her youngest son, Tibbet, the one who she took on board, purportedly took on board to fight with in her arm, was captured and imprisoned and was rumored to soon be executed. Grace took one of her most audacious trips at this point. She sailed down to Queen Elizabeth I's castle and eventually arranged a meeting with her. Despite evidence of Grace's rebellion and piracy, the meeting turned out very nicely for Grace. Tibbet was released and pardoned. Grace's land was returned to her, and she was allowed to continue her trade at sea. Grace had an adventurous life. She had birthed 4 children, amassed significant wealth, and had received a royal pardon. She died at the very ripe age of 73, reportedly on the same day as Queen Elizabeth. Okay, so Dr. Danina, I understand you have some interesting information about another female pirate, Mary Read. So please share it with us.
Yes, indeed. Mary Read, Anne Bonny's partner, had led a very secretive life since early childhood. Born in 1680 in Cornwall, England, she was the daughter of a shopkeeper. She had been dressed as a boy since earliest childhood because her mother had been promised an inheritance from a wealthy uncle for a deceased son. At the age of 13 in 1693, she enlisted as a footboy and then transferred to the British Navy 3 years later. 2 years after that, according to the general history of pirates, she transferred to the army because she had been commended in battle, but one had to buy officer's rank, and her share of the prize money for despoiling French privateers proved insufficient to buy a captain's rank. During the 9 Years' War, Read fell in love with a Flemish soldier. Belgium was part of the Netherlands at that time, when fighting with the Dutch against the French. According to the History of Zeeland, an official publication of the Royal Dutch Historical Society, Mary's success under the orange, blue, and white banner of the Netherlands of the 17th century enabled her to buy both a tavern and an officer's commission. Her commander, Feld Coronet van der Merwe, was aware of her female gender, but had a bit of a crush on her. John J. Robinson's Dungeon, Fire, and Sword says the commander developed an obsession with Mary's feet. We'd call it a fetish today, and traded a frequent glance at that part of her body as the price of his silence. By 1717, Mary Read had returned to the United Kingdom, accepted the king's pardon for smuggling, piracy, and later obscene dancing, and opened a provisioners. CRC is a great podcast for details on what a provisioners is, but in basic terms, it's an 18th century grocery store. Her business savvy allowed her wealth to rapidly expand, and her wealth confirmed social status. In 1718, she began her plundering career. She served under Calico Jack Rackham at the right hand of Anne Bonny. According to John Robinson's Dungeon, Fire, and Sword, it was Mary's decision to plunder exclusively in Hispaniola, a territory now divided between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. While Mary had hidden her female identity in the beginning, later on she often used it as a decoy against other pirates, whether pretending to be a victim or attempting to distract by seduction rival pirate leaders, thus allowing Anne and Rackham to escape with the plunder. During the climactic battle with the forces of the governor of Jamaica, while Anne had knocked out an officer's bicuspid with a rum bottle, Mary went almost mad and proceeded to engage in a melee fight, taking another such bottle and publicly emasculating two soldiers, leaving them to bleed to death, and then biting the shoulder of a captain before being finally subdued. The History of England website demonstrates Mary's iron determination even after being captured and put in chains. In a last ditch effort to rally the remaining pirates as soldiers dragged her below, Mary shouts to the crew, "Don't be gutted like bloody sheep. Fight for everything you want, and if you must die, at least die like men." When she was put on trial, Mary, like Anne Bonny, pled her belly. Her pregnancy brought her a stay of execution. Regrettably, she died shortly after giving birth. In accordance with her last wishes, she was buried in a pine box with her feet unshod, so that whoever escorted her to her place in the afterlife might also see her toes. A bit of an obsession there. The next story we've uncovered is that of Rachel Wall.
Well, who in the heck was Rachel Wall? Well, okay. She was New England's only woman pirate, according to the Historical Society. And she was the last woman to be hanged in Boston. So she was born by the name of Rachel Schmidt in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, around 1760, to devoutly Presbyterian parents. Rachel left home at 16 because she loved the sea and wanted to live near the waterfront. Rachel Schmidt married George Wall, a fisherman, and traveled to New York and Philadelphia before they settled in Boston. Now, he left her, and she worked as a maid on Beacon Hill, where she said she lived very contented. Well, George Wall returned to her, and she wrote, enticed her to leave her service and take to bad company from which I may date my ruin. The couple turned pirate. In 1781, they stole a vessel, the Essex, and operated near the Isles of Shoals of the New Hampshire coast. They waited for rough weather and then disguised the Essex to look as if it had been damaged by the storm. Rachel would call to passing ships for help. And when they docked to the Essex, the pirates stormed the ship and robbed it. It worked for a while. They robbed 12 ships of more than 12,000 in cash and plunder and killed 24 sailors. Then, in 1782, George Wall drowned in a storm. Only this time the storm was for real. And Rachel was rescued. So she goes back to Boston and worked as a maid. Now, I guess she had gotten a taste for thievery because she became quite notorious in Boston for stealing ships docked in the Boston harbor. She was repeatedly convicted of petty theft and larceny. Now, she made a big boo-boo. She chose the wrong people to steal from at times. She carried away the, quote, goods and chattels of Perez Morton. He was a revolutionary patriot and a friend of John Adams, a powerful lawyer and future Speaker of the Massachusetts House of Representatives. Finally, her life of crime came to an end when authorities arrested her for highway robbery. On March of 1789, Rachel Wall is said to have suddenly accosted a 17-year-old woman named Margaret Bender on the public highway in Boston. She is said to have taken her bonnet, worth 7 shillings, and put it on. 2 weeks later, a report of the crime appeared in the Boston paper. As a woman was walking alone, she was met by another woman who seized hold of her and stopped her mouth with her handkerchief and tore from her head her bonnet and cushion. After which she flung her down, took her shoes and buckles, and then fled. She was soon after overtaken and committed to jail. Now, Rachel only lived to 29 years old. On August the 25th, 1789, she was tried by a jury before the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts. Now, remember, she had messed with the wrong people. And she was found guilty, despite her prominent court appointed lawyer, who was called Christopher Gore. During the trial, she admitted to her crimes as a pirate, but denied the highway robbery. Now, good old Governor John Hancock, recognize that name, I'm sure, signed the order that Rachel Wall should be hanged by the neck until dead. Why would you suppose there was such a harsh punishment? Well, the late 1780s were a time when the ruling class believed they were in the throes of an unprecedented crime wave and responded with capital punishment. That's so says Gabriel Gottlieb in Theater of Death, Capital Punishment in Early America, 1750 to 1800. By then, the protection of property had become the prime agenda of the death penalty in urban areas, as Gottlieb says. So, on Thursday, October 8th, 1789, Rachel Wall was hanged along with William Smith and William Dunnigan on Boston Common. Thousands of men, women, and children came to watch the official procession that wound through the streets. They heard the execution sermon. Oh, yes, we had sermons that accompanied hangings in those days. Seems a rather interesting anomaly. And the last words of Rachel Wall as she stood on the gallows, as the noose was put around her neck, Rachel Wall proclaimed her innocence. She said, "The witnesses who swore against me are certainly mistaken. But as a dying person, I freely forgive them." She said she hoped my awful and untimely fate will be a solemn warning and caution to everyone, but more particularly to the youth, especially those of my own sex. Now, her last words: "Into the hands of the Almighty God, I commit my soul, relying on His mercy, and die an unworthy member of the Presbyterian Church in the 29th year of my age." High drama indeed.
One fact that we haven't discussed yet is a wonderful offshoot of the pirate ethos, which took place in the development of so-called havens of free, really anarchic governments run by pirates all over the world. Pirate-run societies offered many opportunities to marginalized groups. Peter Wilson's book, Pirate Utopia, details life in Madagascar. Pirate havens, he says, were home to a diverse mix of people from various cultures and varying backgrounds. This diversity led to a rich cultural exchange, with people sharing customs, languages, and ideas, as well as forming a new and hybrid identities. In contrast to the religious intolerance that characterized much of Europe during this time, Pirate havens were marked by a high degree of religious tolerance. While Christianity was the dominant faith in many of these communities, Muslims and Jews were often allowed to practice their religion freely. Mosques, churches, and synagogues were built at a time where, outside of Switzerland and the UK, the principle in Europe of one state, one religion was almost universal. The haven in Cuba, Matanzas, operated on egalitarian democratic principles. Polish scholar Dr. Jan Logankowski, in his three-volume encyclopedia of pirates, goes into detail about opportunities for former slaves and women in what he calls pirate utopian states, focusing on Tizianus and the original Baltimore, which is a port in Munster, Northern Ireland, that the Baltimore we're familiar with in the USA is actually named after. The famous Barbary pirates who are mentioned in the Marine fight song in the line "The Shores of Tripoli" actually created a quasi-nation in what would become Libya with their own currency, issuing passports, and a state-run medical system. Pirates contributed 10% of their hauls over and above all other dues in exchange for access to a state-financed clinic. Government health insurance in the 1700s, wow, is a very important issue which has not yet been explored. Why, my friends? Why would anyone choose what James Cavell called in Shogun the life of the open sea where you must look to your life with every breath? I can answer that because as a person with an exceptionality in my own somewhat mistaken way, I have craved to take risks, to live life on my own terms. For an era which limited opportunities for non-white people, non-males who did not have aristocratic connections, these pirate ships and the societies they created were a world in which nothing seemed impossible. As a great insurgency expert, Colonel Max Boot said in his wonderful book, Invisible Army, a pirate state is the ultimate meritocracy. Bad leaders don't get voted out, they simply get killed. The sheer excitement, the possibility to win or risk or lose everything on one battle or one action is addictive in a way. It's been a real joy to explore this hidden aspect of 18th century life.
Okay. Well, we hope that you have enjoyed this little excursion into the feminine side of piracy and perhaps picked up a few nuggets of information along the way. I do hope that you will give us a like, subscribe, and we sure do enjoy your comments. And we hope that you will join us again for our next one. Bye for now.
Bye, folks.